Welcome. Today I'll be sharing some highlights from the Partner Marketing Group's annual survey on marketing benchmarks and trends in the technology marketing space. This presentation is only going to cover a small part of the full survey, so at the end, I'll share how you can download the complete report. To start, as I mentioned, this report is for B2B technology marketers. So we've broken that out here so you can see that includes resellers, services partners, ISVs, as well as all these other categories. In our report, we also break down the respondents by size, revenue, and budget so you can see how closely you compare to others. Every year we ask where people are in terms of having a formal marketing plan. Last year, 38% had no plan and 62% had a plan. So the numbers are moving in the right direction, but we still have a third of technology marketers with no plan in place. Part of this is likely driven by smaller companies with limited marketing resources who may tend to be more reactive. However, there's really no excuse. You don't need a 50-page marketing plan either. Something super simple that just outlines your target markets, where and how you're going to touch them, and with what offers will work. The majority of B2B marketers are using a combination of inbound and outbound tactics. We think this is perfect. Despite the many calls for the death of outbound, the bottom line is that in B2B marketing, and particularly in more complicated technology sales, outbound still has a place. If you're doing all one or the other, and luckily that's only 9%, you may be missing some opportunities. We don't think that any of these breakdowns is necessarily the right one either. If you're measuring what you're doing, you know what mix works best for you, and that won't be consistent across all partners, and it could even shift depending on your circumstances. For example, if you have an older site and conversions are an issue, you may hold off on a larger inbound investment until your site is updated. Or if you're moving into a new marketplace, it will take time to build up the content and get the traffic. So you may be using outbound for a time until you can balance it with results from inbound. Moving into the top marketing challenges, lead generation is still the top marketing objective for our respondents. So it makes sense that the aspects of lead generation, including finding new prospects, converting them, and capturing them, are the top challenges. We could tie this back to the previous slide and 38% of people having no formal plan. When we create a plan with our clients, we start by calculating the reach needed based on customer ad goals. That tells us immediately if we have the prospects we need in our contact database to reach those goals. Without a plan, lead generation is going to be difficult, if not impossible. When we look at the most effective lead generation tactics, referrals was also right at the top. One interesting note here is that we broke down the top lead generation tactic investments by company size, and companies with less than 10 people had referrals as their number one tactic, while companies with 11 to 100 employees either didn't mention referrals at all or had them further down on their list. It's very likely that smaller companies with much smaller pipelines are still managing to get the bulk of their deals this way. But as your goals grow, referrals, and particularly without a strong plan, are likely not going to fill the pipeline. In least effective lead generation tactics, email suffers, I think, from being too easy to do and very inexpensive, but also more difficult to do well. Email does still work, but it needs to be thoughtful, part of an integrated plan to an engaged audience with a high value offer. If you don't have those factors, you're practicing random acts of marketing and they never work. Rounding out the top five of least effective are social media posting, blogging, search engine marketing, or also pay-per-click, and social media advertising. There's two takeaways here for me. First, it's important to know the roles of these tactics in lead generation. Blogs, for example, are not lead generation tactics in and of themselves. However, they are critical for pushing out regular new content that Google needs to keep you ranking. This can apply to social media posting as well. We would likely not tell a client that social media posts as standalones are a lead generation tactic, but they are absolutely necessary for lead generation if organic traffic is important to you. When we look at pay per click and social media advertising, there are two big challenges here, and that includes the lack of expertise and budget. While you can set up a LinkedIn or pay per click ad yourself, unless you have experience in these tactics, it's not always a great idea. There are a lot of nuances and changing features and options that you need to be on top of in order to get results. So, as always, what's effective and what isn't has to be considered alongside how well executed the tactic is. Marketers are still focusing on content as a high priority in their marketing. That's also great. It doesn't matter how good your tactics are if you don't have content to act as a magnet and to engage your prospects and customers, the tactics aren't going to work. We are definitely seeing more content being created. The fact that the majority of respondents are creating at least 4 pieces a year is encouraging. One note that I just want to draw your attention to is that we did not include blogs here. So when we talk about the number of content pieces created annually, these are bigger pieces. They're higher value content, including things like ebooks, white papers, videos, case studies, and use cases. Now, of course, the more content, the better. If we're going to give a recommendation, we'd say at least one more substantial piece every other month. If you can get to one a month, that's great. Different pieces, of course, have different levels of effort, and you'll want to make sure you create a mix of high value pieces since people consume content in different ways. Every year, a lack of time and resources are overwhelmingly the biggest barriers to creating original content. We hear this from our clients all the time. Yet every year, we see that more than 65% of technology marketers are still trying to create all or most of their content in house. An experienced marketing agency can help you find creative ways to repurpose and extend content so even smaller marketing departments can afford to stay competitive. SEO was the second most effective lead generation tactic in 2019, but 45% of technology marketers have not yet invested in a professional keyword analysis. If you're doing SEO in house, there are some basic tips you should consider, and I'm sharing those here. But one thing that you really need to think about is investing in a quarterly or biannual SEO checkup with a professional. They're going to look at what's happening on your site, provide recommendations, and let you know about any new opportunities within organic search that you may have missed. So if you're going it alone and the person in your organization is not focused on this full time, if they don't have the time to stay up to date on the trends and the changes within Google and other search engines, then it's really important that you have an expert that shadows what you're doing and is there to help you spot some new opportunities and trends. One area that's particularly interest to all of us is how B2B marketers are telling their customer stories. Many B2B experts consider customer stories one of the most compelling pieces of content you can create. And really, depending on the approach you take, those case studies can support decision makers in any stage of the sales cycle. Study after study really shows that the most powerful leads are those that are recommended by peers. So, peer recommended leads are more responsive and more likely to close than leads generated by any marketing channel. In B2B marketing, that peer to peer recommendation is really driven by customer stories. It's the one piece of content that's always going to be completely unique to your company, features your customers, their needs, and your solutions. So it's the one thing no other competitor is going to have. We're very encouraged that so many people have at least, we see 33% have at least 4 to 6 case studies, and then it goes up from there. There's a huge opportunity to break through on your marketing by being the company that goes to market with their customers. When it comes to social media, it's no surprise that LinkedIn is still on top. We're also seeing more partners finding success using Twitter, provided it's done well and consistently. Some partners are definitely seeing that, again, as a means of lead generation within a bigger lead generation program. And it can be even more powerful if you combine it with social selling techniques within your organization. Finally, let's talk for a minute about how marketers are getting all this done. No surprise that about 2/3 of B2B technology marketers are outsourcing some part of their marketing. The most outsourced elements are those that require special skill sets, such as content development and search engine optimization. And of course, that makes perfect sense. Thought about outsourcing and kind of a final thought to close up here is when thinking about what to outsource, it can be helpful to really look at the expectation for today's B2B marketers. You need an extensive and diverse skill set. So look internally in your organization to see what you can do really well and then outsource the rest. Think of marketing, your marketing department or your marketing person, if it's just a single person, as the conductor or the orchestra leader, pulling together the resources that are needed, both internally and externally, to get the job done. Hopefully, this survey can help you look at your own marketing, see how you compare with others in your field, and where you might need to invest. So, as I mentioned, you can download the full report at technologymarketingreport.com. We would love to have you join us in next year's survey. And certainly, if you have any questions on anything that we've shared today or on B2B technology marketing in general, please contact us at info@thepartnermarketinggroup.com or visit our website. Thank you for your time today.